Clouds hung low in the skies from the immortals riding through the heavens. A storm beckoned on the horizon, not of wind or rain, but brewed with bloodshed and betrayal, thick with ancient grudges. The celestial kingdom had been overthrown by one of mortal heritage, and the cloud wall was defending those who had cast it from the borders. The four seas were divided once more, old alliances broken, and new ones forged in the span of days. It was like the world had been turned over and shaken for good measure. The immortal realm might never go back to what it once was, and I did not realize how much I regretted this until faced with its loss. Li Wei and I soared over the Cerulean Mountains, a jagged ridge of peaks that lay to the north of the cloud wall and west of the desert. Sunlight gleamed across Li Wei's gold armor, while I wore just dark blue robe with my bow slung across my back. Behind us flew Xu Zhao, along with my mother and father. Wen Ji was already here with his soldiers, working to reinforce the wards ahead of the impending confrontation. As he flew toward us, the light danced off his black armor in glints of bronze. His great sword was strapped to his side, a green cloak swirling from his shoulders. As his cloud drew alongside ours, he inclined his head in greeting. "We expect Wugong's forces to strike soon, tomorrow or the day after." "Is there any news from the other kingdoms?" Li Wei asked. "No. Perhaps they will not come," Wen Ji replied, the corners of his mouth tightening. In the distance, the soldiers of the cloud wall had gathered, casting a shadow over the pale sands beneath. Such terror they had struck in me before, and now I wished there were more of them. Not enough, my mind whispered. Not enough to stand against Wugong's deadly soldiers, the vast white and gold army that curled like a monstrous serpent along the edge of the desert and cloud. The wind strengthened, whipping my hair across my cheek. As I brushed it aside, I caught a brightness on the horizon. Soldiers in blue and silver armor soaring toward us, led by Prince Yanji. My chest caved at the memory of the last time I had seen him, bearing his brother's body in his arms. While Prince Yanji's expression was somber, he greeted Li Wei and me with warmth. However, he stiffened at the sight of Wen Ji. "Your Majesty." He spoke with cool familiarity, as it startled me to hear Wen Ji addressed so. "The Eastern Sea does not march on behalf of the demon realm. I am here to avenge my brother." Wen Ji inclined his head. "Nevertheless, we welcome your aid. We need not be friends to be allies." Shrill cries rang out, accompanied by the swish of air. Soldiers in bronze armor flew across the skies, mounted upon magnificent phoenixes. Crimson sparks trailed in their wake, their plumage so bright as though coated in flame, with rainbows fluttering from their tails. In their midst soared the celestial empress. She would always be that to me, whether she had a throne or not. I almost did not recognize her, the purpose shining upon her face, devoid of her habitual malice or tension. Was this a glimpse of what she was before? Had her bitterness been born from the disillusionment of her marriage, of having her wings clipped by the life in the celestial kingdom? I did not like her any better, but perhaps I understood her a little more. The Empress halted by our cloud, sliding off her mount with ease. "Queen Feng Jin will join our fight against the villain Wugong," she announced with pride. "We are grateful for her aid," Li Wei said, adding, "as we are for yours, mother. You must have changed her mind, for the queen did not seem inclined to support us before." "Wukong must be stopped." She cast a scathing look at Wen Ji. "I did not do this for you. They do not fight for the demons. I could not care less what happens to your wretched kingdom." Wen Ji's eyes flashed. "Neither do I care what happens to the celestial kingdom, for it has already fallen." The Empress's red lips twisted into a snarl. Li Wei cleared his throat. "There is nothing to be gained by insulting each other. We are glad for reinforcements." "Indeed." A mocking smile tugged at Wen Ji's lips. "How fortunate that while we are loathed by most of the immortal realm, they hate Wugong more." "As they should, for Wugong is the greatest threat we have ever faced," my father said, alighted from Xu Zhao's cloud to ours. His bow lay across his back like a crescent of silver. My mother followed him, her face pale and drawn. "Are you well enough to be here?" I asked Xu Zhao anxiously. "Well enough and bored enough. Anything would be better than another week lying down and being fed vile herbal concoctions." She shuddered, crossing her arms. "The dragons are wise and powerful, yet their medicines are foul." "Bitter medicines are preferable to fatal wounds." I examined the armies, relieved at the sight, and yet my spirits had never been lower. How many would still stand after a battle? How many would return to their families? There would be no mercy from Wugong or his soldiers. I did not think they were capable of it. My gaze shifted to the swath of clouds on the other side of the mountain range, those I had avoided examining too closely before. Wugong's soldiers, a forest of them, glittering like sunlight upon snow. Alongside them were the turquoise-armed troops of the southern sea. Queen Suihe was said to have talent for picking the winning side, and I hoped this time her assessment was flawed. There were older soldiers, too, whom I did not recognize, clad in armor of copper and of green. The North and Western Sea will fight against us, Li Wei observed tersely. They were not our allies, but this was a blow. I had hoped they would steer clear of confrontation. Queen Suihe must have won their support for Wugong during the gathering of the Four Seas, I said. Before the battle commences, we must do one thing, Li Wei said. We need someone familiar with the Jade Palace to secure my father, General Jian Yun, and the other courtiers imprisoned by Wugong. Otherwise, they will be in grave danger. They will be used as hostages. Xu Zhao bowed. I will go. General Jian Yun has been kind to me, to all of us under his command. A few of our soldiers can accompany you, Wen Qi gestured to the immortal behind him, who stepped forward and bowed. As General Meng Qi straightened, she cast a baleful look my way, no doubt recalling how I had duped her before. General Meng Qi, assemble a group to head to the Jade Palace, he instructed her. Xu Zhao, previously a lieutenant of the Celestial Army, will lead them. The general's lips tightened as she studied Xu Zhao. Your Majesty, is she competent? I will not risk our soldiers' safety recklessly. She is as competent as you are, I replied with an edge in my voice, and not so easily fooled. A petty taunt, but I would not stand by while my friend was insulted. Xu Zhao's eyes narrowed. After this is over, you may test my competence with any weapon of your choice. For her sake, I hoped General Meng Qi would not select the bow. Such childishness! Do not indulge such rash impulses when the lives of my soldiers are at stake. General Meng Qi's stare was forbidding, yet bright with speculation. Xu Zhao deliberately turned her back to the general. Xingyin, take care. Her words were laden with meaning as she glanced at my mother. I clasped her hand. As should you. I will see you when we return. Till then, she agreed. We will share our stories over a jug of wine. Are you ready, or do you have more farewells to make? General Meng Qi asked brusquely. Xu Zhao's lips parted in more a grimace than a smile. I'm beginning to regret this. Battling undead celestials would be preferable. Shaking her head, she followed General Meng Qi. They stood apart as they mounted a cloud, soaring toward the cloud wall soldiers. The sun descended, a lull falling over us, riddled with gloom and a shred of relief. There would be no confrontation this evening. Battles were for mornings, which offered the shining promise of glory, the dawn of hope. The nights were for slinking back into the shadows to lick one's wounds, for stifled cries and fears, unbound, and those dark acts of deceit. Wugong would come for my mother soon. With the impending battle, he would need a fresh harvest of laurel seeds to replenish his depleted forces. Dread warred with anticipation, not because I hungered for danger, but because my nerves strung taut. The heat from the scarlet flame feather seared through my pouch, surging against the barriers woven around it. I did not know how much longer I could sustain this drain on my power, a struggle to maintain this farce. Mother, we must get you someplace safe, I called out for the benefit of Wugong's spies, to whet his appetite. The Cloudwall courtier had been dispatched to betray my mother's location to Wugong in exchange for a favored position, a lie concealed within a lie. My mother and I flew back to the Cloudwall Palace, making our way to her room. It was elegantly furnished with mahogany furniture, and the dark wood inlaid with iridescent mother of pearl. Bronze incense burners flanked the entrance, and I had grown accustomed to the rich scent. She helped me into a set of her garments, draping the white silk robe over my shoulders, tying the vermilion sash around my waist, then fastening upon it a few of her jade ornaments. Finally, she coiled my hair up, securing it with gold hairpins before sliding a red peony just above my ear. The weight in my chest sunk lower. Was it the familiarity of her gestures that caught at me? It was like I was a child again, being dressed by her. How effortless life had seemed then, akin to gliding through a lake rather than wrestling with these turbulent waters. Pinker would not have wanted this. My mother's eyes were bright with unshed tears. She would not have wanted you to risk yourself this way, not even to avenge her. She only wanted you to be happy and safe. My throat closed tight. This isn't just about vengeance. This is greater than all of us. I want Wugong to pay for what he's done, but more than that, I must do this. He is a tyrant, a ruthless madman, who thinks nothing of sending his armies to an endless rampage of death. He has killed so many and will murder countless more if not stopped. What future will await us under his reign? I turned to look her full in the face. I used to think the outside world did not matter, as long as they left us untouched. I prided myself on not being unduly burdened by the inconveniences of honor or ambition, caring only about my home, my family, and loved ones. I was wrong. My voice broke then. Trouble reached us, no matter how we tried to keep clear of it. Our home was taken, we were hunted, we lost those we loved. Evil must be struck at its roots. The long dragon's words echoed through my mind. My mother pressed her palm to my cheek, and I leaned against it. She did not speak, the love shining in her face thawing a little of the ice in my heart. A knock on the door broke the tender moment, as my father, Li Wei, and Wen Xi entered. I rose to my feet and grasped the jade dragon bow. It tingled with a frantic energy, as though sensing my intent. Had it hoped for this all along? Had I merely been its custodian? It did not matter. This was something I should have yielded before, except I had been too selfish, relieved even when my father had refused it the first time. It hurt to give it up, but I did not need it where I was going, and I was glad to have finally found its true owner. Father, this is yours. I bowed, raising my hand to offer him the bow. He pushed it aside. Keep it, Xingyan. I do not need it. The jade dragon bow belongs to you, I repeated. You must take it. Sky Fire can bring down Wugong's soldiers. Use it to keep Mother and you safe. Be careful not to exhaust yourself. I stopped then, feeling a little foolish, like I was trying to teach a fish how to swim. This weapon was an extension of his arm. He made no move to take it, but perseverance was a trait we both shared. Taking his hand, I pried his fingers apart to press the bow to his grip. The jade glittered, light rippling through the frame across our joined hands, just as when I had first touched it, my skin flushing cold, then hot. The carved dragon writhed and shuddered before stilling once more. And then it was gone. The pull I'd always sensed from the bow. I let go, leaving it in my father's grasp. An ache pierced me, as though I had bid a dear friend farewell. I did not think I would miss it so. Wielding the bow had made me feel special, powerful, strong. Yet I did not need it to be those things. Wugong's soldiers are on their way. We must make haste, Wen Xi said. As I nodded, Wen Xi drew out the scroll from his sleeve, unrolling the yellowed strips of bamboo, crammed with tiny characters. As he passed his palm over it, agleam with power, the characters leapt off the scroll, hovering in the air like dark moths. This enchantment can only be performed once, he cautioned, taking my hands firmly in his. What should I do? I asked. Look upon your mother. Keep her face firmly in your mind, he instructed. I studied her slender eyes beneath delicately arched brows. Skin of moonlight, hair of night. When I was young, I had wished to look like her, and now it might be the death of me. Wen Ji's power pulsed from his fingers, his energy coursing through me with the force of a storm. The black brush strokes of the characters broke apart, encircling me like a chain, swirling across my body, gliding over my limbs and face before stilling, a heartbeat before seeping into my skin like spilled ink. Pain seared, jagged, and raw, like the words were being carved into my flesh. A hoarse gasp broke from me, sweat beading on my brow. Wen Ji's grip tightened around my hands. Shall I stop? I shook my head, gritting my teeth. Continue. The hurt swelled until each breath was a struggle. It erupted through every pore on my body, my skin, bones, and teeth. Pressed, squeezed, and scorched like I was being made anew, shaped from clay and fired in a forge, like those soldiers Wugong had spoke of, who guarded the mortal emperor's tomb. Just when I could bear it no more, a scream rising from my throat, the agony subsided, leaving a dull throb throughout my body and an unfamiliar tautness like the thinnest of threads stretched between Wenji and me. As he released my hands, I staggered back, clutching the table. My vision blurred, then sharpened once more. I lifted my fingers to my face, running them over my chin, the slender arch of my nose and cheekbones. My eyes collided with my mother's, hers widening with disbelief. "Your face," she stammered. "Did it work?" I started to hear bell-like tones emerging from my throat. "Yes, for as long as the enchantment holds," Wenji said. "How long do I have?" I asked. "As long as you need." He tilted his head toward me. "You must be careful not to unleash the feather's power while it's within you. Keep yourself shielded from it at all times." "I will," I assured. "Will Wukong sense your magic?" Li Wei asked anxiously. As I glared at Wenji, he shook his head. "It will be masked, along with your aura." A powerful spell. Little wonder that his father had kept this scroll with his most treasured possessions. "It is a strain on you?" I asked. He smiled. "I can bear it as long as you can." "How will you fight?" I wanted to know. "General Meng Qi will lead the army in my stead. You and I are linked through this spell. I can't be too far from you. I will follow at a safe distance." His brow creased, unease flashing across his face. He did not like leaving his army in the care of others, yet some battles were not won on the field. "What if Wugong's soldiers sense you?" I asked. "I will go with him," Li Wei said. Wenji stiffened. "I'll take my chances with Wugong's soldiers." "I would be glad to let you," Li Wei countered, "but I will risk no disruptions to the spell. For tonight I will guard your safety as I would Xinyan's." Wenji hesitated before inclining his head in acceptance. Warmth suffused my heart at this exchange, a deep sense of peace. There were far too many reasons for them to be at odds, the celestial heir and the demon king, and I was glad to no longer be one of them. "I will be there too," my father said. I would be glad for his presence, that they would keep each other safe. "How will you unleash the feather?" Li Wei asked me. "Once I'm close enough to the laurel, I will undo the enchantment which binds it. Wukong will be too distracted trying to save the laurel to prevent my escape," I said smoothly. Only someone assured of success would speak so, or a practiced liar. Wenji's gaze narrowed. "Have you decided where to plant the feather?" "By its roots," for that was how the laurel had drunk of Wukong's blood and my mother's tears, and that was how it would end it. Despite my glib answers, this was no simple matter. There were far too many things that could go wrong, countless terrifying scenarios I had replayed through my mind to better prepare myself. My greatest fear was Wukong might sense a trap, that he would see through my disguise and destroy the feather before I had a chance to unleash it. There was just one sacred flame feather left in the realm. I could not waste it, which meant I had to maintain my pretense until the last possible moment, and that I would have the barest sliver of time to escape. I glanced up to find Li Wei staring at me. Perhaps he sensed the dread that thickened my blood, the anxiety tangling inside. "Be careful, Xingyan. Once you unleash the feather, hide. Don't take on Wukong alone. We will come the moment you need us. If Wukong detects your disguise, if the link between us is severed, I will sense it at once. You won't be alone, even if you don't see us there," Wenji assured me. "It's almost time," my father said. Now that our path was set, he would show no doubt. Half the battle was won in the mind. I glanced out the window, concealing my face. Dusk had fallen, a veil of violet splendor, elusive and fragrant, with mystery and promise. Yet a hollow numbness sheathed me as I clasped my hands together to hide their shaking. One breath, and then another, until finally my heart calmed. Only then did I dare to look at them, pressing each of their beloved faces into my mind. Precious remembrances to sustain me through the hell ahead. You should go before Wukong's soldiers arrive. I did not know how much longer I could sustain this mask of calm. My mother embraced me, her arms tight around my neck and shoulders. I swallowed hard, inhaling the faint sweetness of her scent, trying to ignore the tears which fell from her eyes onto my robe. She released me, hurrying from the room. Li Wei and Wenji bowed to me then, their faces solemn as they straightened. I bent my head to them in turn, my throat crammed with unsaid words, my heart heavy with suspended emotion as they left. In a moment my father would be gone too. Father, wait. An involuntary cry I could not prevent. I had faced dire situations before, been dragged to the brink of death. Yet there was a difference to this one. The burden was almost crushing, for the stakes were greater by far, not just my life and those of my loved ones, but of every immortal and mortal in the realms, above and below. I could not fail, I dared not, and yet could I prevail? My father came toward me. Daughter, what is it? How did you feel when you faced the sunbirds? A halting question. Afraid, he said bluntly. His answer comforted me, soothing my fraught nerves. Why did you do it? Grief shadowed his face. He looked older in that moment, an echo of the mortal I had first met, stooped with the cares of time. I did not want to. I knew I would pay a heavy price, for they were beloved by the gods. Yet if I did not, all whom I loved would perish. I do not want to do this. My words fell out in a low cry. I am not courageous. I am afraid. I am no hero. I did not shy from sharing these thoughts with him. More than anyone, he knew the price that must be paid, the hard choices that had to be made. You are, he said with feeling, for the fools do not fear the odds, the reckless do not care, and only the truly brave proceed regardless. He placed a hand on my shoulder, steady and warm. It was either the sunbirds or the world, and along with the world my wife, you, my unborn child, my friends, and every other living creature. There is nothing more worth fighting for. He reached out and hugged me, his palm stroking the back of my head. I am proud of you, my daughter, whether you do this or not. If you cannot, there is no shame. Say it now, and we will find another way. There was no other way. Yi, is Xingyan all right? My mother appeared at the entrance, looking anxiously at me. Thank you, Father. It was a relief to have said all this aloud, to confront the inner demons that plagued me. And even though the impossible task lay before me still, I did not feel so alone anymore. He released me. Remember, my child, if you believe in yourself, in what you're doing, no one can take that from you. He left then, all of them gone, each carrying away a piece of me. As the doors slid shut, their footsteps faded, the silence deepening with foreboding. I stared at the mirror, my mother's face looking back at me. Reaching into my pouch, I pulled out the translucent orb containing the feather. It shivered like a living creature, each barb ablaze, shining golden bright. It warmed to my touch, straining against the restraints that bound it. Drawing a ragged breath, I released my magic inward, plunging it into the core of my life force, as I had done once before, the day I released the dragons. I clawed it apart, the glittering pool spilling free, incandescent with the light of the heavens. I did not hesitate, not allowing myself to think as I pressed the orb against my forehead, shut my eyes, and let my magic sweep over it. The feather seared as it sank through my skin and flesh, like a pebble pressed into damp sand, giving way as it slid into the core of my life force. The heat scorched, startling in its intensity, and at once I wove a shield around it, tightening the barriers until not a pinprick slipped through. It was done. My head throbbed like a hammer was pounding it from within. How had King Wenming borne this? It would suffice to drive anyone to madness. A shudder rippled through my body as I sank upon the bed. A sob wrenched from my chest before I buried it. For the very moment my life was illuminated by love, it had never seemed so dark.